Yes, hi, thank you. When you were giving the example of, from the reading from Heaven and Hell, you got the point, but then you said when you then come together as a group, you discuss it, but it's not really a, can you give an example of how, in using that number, how you would share that with a group, what you found?
Sure. So we kind of have a bit of a outline as to how to go about that. And so you would read what your task was. Or you'd read the portion of that reading that you're working from.
Right.
You would read what your task is or bring it to the group. And then you would talk about just, you'd really talk about the shifts and change, because that was about, so the way that task was framed was about when I remembered the truth of that in a situation where I was wanting more respect or, you know what I mean. But so what happened when I remembered that? And then you may speak about, my state shifted. I no longer wanted that respect in the same way and became much more engaged in the situation from a less self-centered point of view. And so that might be it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it might have been that it flowed out of a conflict with my spouse, but I don't need to. People don't need that detail. But the principle and its illustration is an important part of the mix, and well, it's vital. It's vital to the group. So, and in the Logopraxis group, no one. It's not obligatory for anyone to actually share as such, and it's done in a round. So no one asks you to go into more detail or anything like that. You just bring what is your gift from the Lord to the group, and you just offer it to the group. And because it's from the Lord, it's not yours, right? So you just put it out there because that's what the Lord wants you to do. Anything else? Yeah.
Many churches today are struggling with how to reach youth, and the young people today are not choosing to do church in the traditional ways that we've done it. And this sounds like something to me that might appeal to young people. So my question is have you done this with any young groups, say high school, college age?
No, the short answer is no, I haven't. And it's probably not something in this particular form that I would, I wouldn't say this kind of work is something for younger people in this particular form. So you probably have to look at a modified way of doing it. Because the spiritual literacy skills that you require, it's probably more around, I don't know, but say 30-ish. It's probably something it's more suited to there. But do you want to respond to that, Eric?
Yeah.
Work with a younger group?
I'll just say that I've got a group of 20, 30-somethings that has been doing this, but it is a modified form. It's a little bit more interactive because I don't think, again, it's the maturity thing, they need more give and take. To be able to let things settle and adapt and move in their minds, the kind of the discipline that you were describing of I'm giving the principle, I'm giving the application, nothing else would be a little too spare from what I've experienced. But it's opening up the Word, and it's changing a study group from a discussion to a life process. So to me, that's a win. But yeah, I think there's potential if we adapted it. And I would love to have discussions with people about how to do that better.
Thank you. Okay. Hey.
Where is Logopraxis done other than Bryn Athyn? What is the experience of Logopraxis in the world?
Yep, so we run both face-to-face and online groups. online groups use Google Hangout to meet, so we have a mix across a number of time zones of people that come together in those. And but you know, face-to-face groups. There's a number of face-to-face groups here in Bryn Athyn. There's one in Campton. There's one in Adelaide, where I am based. But we have people, obviously, who are in the online groups from Australia. Australia's a relatively large country. Also in the US, and a person in the UK that's involved as well. So that's quite
I was interested by a comment you made about the metaphor for death and awakening in the spiritual world, and like how Swedenborg goes through the steps there, and then you sort of use that as an analogy for awakening in the spiritual world, or to spiritual awareness now.
Right.
And then I kind of missed, like, what was it that you used those steps for as part of the structure?
Yeah, thanks. Great question. So through that process, which is in the late 400s through to the early 500s, I think, that you see a process whereby what's described as a state of external concerns, state of internal concerns, state of instruction, and then through to heaven, right? So people arrive in the spiritual world, as that's described, and they basically brought into pretty much the life that they had in the world, and then that is slowly unpacked. And as the more external aspects of their life are put aside, they move into the more internal aspects. So, and that's our experience, I think, with with the text. When we first come to the text, we're kind of reading it, and you might be reading about Abraham and Sarah, and you're in the externals of it. You're kind of working with the historicals of it, and then there's kind of a realization, of course, that it's not really about historical characters. These characters are actually represent some dynamic that operates within us. So then you are starting to move into what's more of an internal concern. And that happens through the formulation of the task as I described there. It goes from something out there to becoming something here. And it's out of that experience that you get instruction. So the traditional model is, in church life, is you give people information up front, and hopefully they'll be able to do something with it, whereas with this kind of model, what it is, it's about being able to cultivate the ground in us through our practice by which that principle can be more fully illustrated and become something much more real for us rather than something off out there. And that's, that formed the kind of framework for this work. Does that help?
I thought that was an interesting analogy to make, and thank you.
Correct. Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah.
You talk about a task. Is that part of the program, or is that something that each individual develops for themselves?
Right, so each individual arrives at what they're going to be working with. So the idea is that the Lord is the divine truths, and that they are selecting what it is you need to work with. And so every person in the group will possibly work with something different. So every person becomes, in a sense, learner and teacher. Yeah, so, it's remarkable just how all of that dovetails. And we have had and have people who are doing different texts in the same group, and that's not a problem either, because we're working with the principle and illustrating spiritual principle. So the idea is that if you're working with a particular text and it's getting a bit tough and you run away and you go and grab another text, well, that text is just going to give you what you were getting from the other one anyway.
I just had another thought. So, in the process that you described, you said there's a section and then you read through it and highlight the parts that had an impact on you. And this is just an observation, I've sometimes had the thought of like, maybe it's the passages that I didn't have an impact on are the ones that I need to pay more attention to, because it's like, there was something in there that I just read over and didn't internalize. So it's almost like there could be use in.
Yeah, for
in
sure.
like,
So
with
look at what you
passages.
haven't made.
Yeah, what's
So,
the stuff you didn't look at, you didn't find what was in it.
yeah, so often, so my own experience is I tend to work with things that what can trigger things for me are things that seem to contradict what I think. That's another aspect of it. And there can be a tendency to read over things that don't fit in with, the framework that I have. But now I've learned that is a trigger for me. Like there's something to be looked at here because I'm not getting something. And so the idea with, again, this idea of the Lord being the Word, what's happening is that we set out reading the text, only to find in the end that the text is actually reading us. Right? So, and that's a profound shift when that happens. So there is a quote, I don't know if I have it here, but it's a quote from the Epistle to the Hebrews, which talks about the Word being sharper than any two-edged sword, dividing, being active. It's an active, it's alive, it's the Lord, right? And it's actually having an impact on us as we engage with it and open to receiving from it. So one of the things we encourage people not to do is, as much as possible, don't bring your own agenda to your spiritual growth. You may think there may be these relationships you think need sorting out, and so you read the text looking for a way to go with your agenda as to what needs sorting out. What this teaches you is that you have to trust the process. You come to learn to trust the process, so that what the Lord is offering you out of the text is what you actually need. And you may not be able to connect it to anything going on in your life at that particular point in time. But the Lord is interested and has a view of your life which is complete. And that thing that you're working on, you think, how does this apply? And so you struggle through it and find that you start to get insights and things, but they have nothing to do with your agenda, right? So, but there's a group here as well. It's not just about you. What the Lord gives you, you bring to a group, and it could be for someone else in that group, or it could be for you 5 years down the track. You just don't know. You have to just come to trust that the Word is well able to provide you with what you need. And unless you put yourself in a position whereby you're able to receive, you don't receive. I mean, that's the law. That's the spiritual law.
Just to add, there have been a couple of times where I have skipped over and ignored some of the text. And my experience is every time I have done that someone else in the group has done that number. And I still get the work during the lunch break. That's just my personal experience. So, if you are skipping something that the Lord really wants you to work on, He'll bring it to you.
Yeah, that's one of that.
Play with the Lord and see how that works for you.
I've been amazed, having, gone through school and read the Word, and the difference in Logopraxis is the dialogue with the Lord. That instead of me going and doing my thing with the Word, there's a direct interaction that feels, I hate saying this, it feels so healthy. It's like, instead of just meeting somebody and, you know, oh, we're writing about each other, and, you know, letters can be very intimate, but all of a sudden you're walking hand in hand with them, and they're sharing your meal with you, and going out and, you know, driving in the car when you think you're all alone, and all of a sudden you're doing your task in the car, and the Lord is there with you. Oh, hi. Guess I shouldn't be swearing at that person. You know, I guess that's my task this week. And just the delightful full dialogue with the Lord that's there because you're not putting an agenda on. It's not, I'm reading this to write a paper, or I'm reading this to having done it, or it's there's a reverence of, I'm reading this to listen to the Lord, and so He can order my life.
I'm thinking about Hannah's asking about that, how would it look in a group that talking about that pass from heaven and hell. And just, I've been doing Logopraxis, and just want to add that what may have happened is that I'm in a situation, I'm not getting the acknowledgement I think I deserve, and I remember my task, and anger flares up, and an argument flares up inside. It isn't always a lovely revelation. It's a revelation of what's there. So for some of us, it's rarely a lovely revelation. But the point being that one of the things that's so wonderful to me about this, as far as historical faith goes, that meeting appropriate for what it is what Logopraxis is about. It's not trying to pretend I don't have one, or act like it doesn't have the clout it does. That there's a truth that it's there, and this work brings it up and holds your face in it. And getting that is an aspect of accepting what the Lord teaches that I find very freeing, and it's not pretty. And I like that. It doesn't have to be pretty to count.
Right. So, Logopraxis, it's whatever comes up is what the Word is wanting us to see. You know. So we have it's probably in a little booklet somewhere, but the idea is that the freeing is in the seeing. You know, when we can see what it is that binds us, in that moment we're set free, if we truly see it for what it is.
I'd just like to say, one of the things that drew me here tonight was that my sister, whose initials are Grace Glenn, I have observed in her over time, her regenerating in front of my eyes. It just, you know, it's been, real to me, you know, and I want that. And I've not been able to read the writings and stuff, you know, I'm just not.
Yeah, you know, that's a remarkable thing too, you know, like my wife is not of an academic bent, or she's tactile sort of person, and earlier on struggled, you know, with the doctrine. But she's now in the AC group, gets through her reading, goes through the same process every time. You know, I can't understand any of this. It's in one area and out the other. But in the end, there's just a remarkable insight, you know. And this is the thing, you know. I sit, you know, somebody who's formally studied to become a minister, but I sit in a group and I'm just blown away by the insights that come. You know, they're things that are just, well, they're just amazing. It's amazing stuff that what the Lord is doing in people's lives, and how He manages their lives. You know, it's just, it's profound. It's profound.
I think that last comment is probably an indication that people who are working on living a life according to the Word are people you like to be around. They project that, the Lord's love and everything. And this is not to throw a wet blanket on the process at all, but kind of looking back to various times that I've been through different kinds of systems or whatever anybody might want to call them. There have been other practices of the Word that have been very similar, and I would just like to make a plug for the fact that we often come in touch with those kinds of systems, one of which I think some folks in this room are probably familiar with, from Sylvia, I can't remember her last name now, the educator who, Sylvia Parker, who consistently, one of her themes was teach the way the Lord taught. And we teachers would often come back to that and think in the classroom or wherever we're encountering people, is this the way Jesus would have responded to this situation? And it's not pretty when you go through that. And it's a growing experience that you realize, I didn't have the right attitude when I responded in that particular case. Or, oh yeah, this is a way we could have done this better. And it's a practice of the Word with a different process.
Right.
And isn't it wonderful that we have all those other ways to do it?
That's right, it is, and it's, this structure is not for everybody. And that's why we have the variety that we have in terms of people being able to come into contact with truth in a real way, in a lived way, which is what it's all about.
I just want to say that from my experience in Logopraxis, one of the important aspects is the community aspect of it, where you are with other humans with all our flaws and everything, and to see this group of people all with the Lord right there in the center, and all really trying to live His truth. And aside from that group, I have found more community with even those people outside of the group, because of the being willing to share and to feel the Lord's presence. So it's not just that every 2 weeks feeling good. It's or not good. But it's the continual practice, which involves other people. You can't have when something comes up, when somebody makes you angry, oh, sorry. It isn't just in the group, and you're working on that.
Right.
So it really is a life change. You're living your religion. That's what you do.
Okay. So just take a moment and close your eyes. And just take a few deep breaths. Just try to still your thoughts. And just bringing your attention to the feeling of life within you. Just bringing to your awareness that feeling of life, that it is your own as an appearance. that it is the product of the Lord flowing into your soul. And that the Lord is so intimately related to you that from his perspective there can be no separation. For he is your very life.